My ladies and gentlemen of Africa and beyond, I welcome each and every one of you to Dr. Hayford's lecture. The objective of today's lecture is to help you appreciate and to get an overview information on what constitutes the essentials of the chemistry of life. Yes, today's lecture, the objective is to help you appreciate and to get an overview information on what constitutes the essentials of chemistry of life. This is actually the part one of two of such lectures. This part covers to a large extent the inorganic chemistry components of the essentials of the chemistry of life. In the next lecture, we'll be talking about the organic chemistry component of the essentials of the chemistry of life. In the meantime, my people of Africa and beyond, I would like to say that to begin with, you should take note of the fact that all living organisms, including human beings, their domesticated plants and animals, the pathogens which cause them economically important biomedical conditions, and so on and so forth, are all made up of matter. Furthermore, the non-living things such as the water we drink, the drugs we take when we are not well, the clothes we wear, and so on and so forth, are all made up of matter. In addition, all matter is known to be composed of chemical elements. In other words, if both living and non-living organisms are made up of matter, then we can afford to say that one similarity between living and non-living things is the fact that both of them are composed of chemical elements. Let us also take note of the fact that if both living and non-living things are composed of chemical elements, then we can afford to agree with the authorities that both living and non-living things are subjected to the same laws of chemistry and physics which govern the whole of the universe. Ladies and gentlemen, let us take note of the fact that elements have atoms, and atoms are made up of subatomic particles. Of course, it is possible that you already acknowledge the fact that an atom is the smallest part of an element which displays the property of the elements. Yes, it is possible that you know that an atom is the smallest part of an element which displays the property of the element. Again, it is possible that you are aware that an element and its atom are known to have the same name and the same symbol. Every atom has subatomic particles, with the most studied subatomic particles being protons, neutrons, and electrons. Yes, there are three most studied subatomic particles, and they are protons, neutrons, and electrons. Of course, you can perform further research and know of the other subatomic particles which are known to science. Furthermore, I would like you to appreciate the fact that an atom possesses a central nucleus which is made up of protons and neutrons. In other words, the two of the subatomic particles, namely protons and neutrons, are located in a central nucleus within the atom. The protons are positively charged, and each proton has one atomic mass unit. Yes, each proton has one atomic mass unit, AMU. On the other hand, the neutrons have no charge, but each one of them has one AMU, atomic mass unit. In other words, if you are to be asked to compare and contrast protons and neutrons, then in one way, when it comes to let's say, comparing, you can afford to say that both are located in the nucleus of the atom or nucleus of atoms. To probably contrast, you can afford to say that the protons are positively charged and each proton has one atomic mass unit, whereas the neutrons have no charge, but each one of them has one atomic mass unit, AMU. In other words, you would like to establish the fact that the protons and the neutrons are found in the nucleus of atoms, and they both determine the mass number of an atom. In addition to these, note also that an atom has orbiting clouds around nucleus called electron shells. The electron shells are also referred to as energy levels. And the shells can also be called valence shells when they are the outermost. The electrons are negatively charged with relatively low mass, and therefore their mass is assumed to be negligible in calculations. Yes, in chemistry, the electrons have been found to be negatively charged with relatively very low mass, and therefore their mass is assumed to be negligible in calculations. Our cherished next generation of leaders of Africa and beyond, did you know the atomic number shows the number of protons and the number of electrons in electrically neutral atoms? The atomic number, it shows the number of protons and the number of electrons in electrically neutral atoms. Recall the fact that a proton possesses a positive charge, a neutron is uncharged, and an electron has a negative charge. Ladies and gentlemen, the vocabulary isotopes refer to atoms of a single element which vary in their number of neutrons. Yes, isotopes are atoms of the same element which differ in their number of neutrons. One important reason for studying or learning about the isotopes is the discovery of radioisotopes. Indeed, radioisotopes are put into many uses around the world. Some of such uses are tracers in biological experiments. They are used in biomedical procedures such as imaging of organs and tissues through radiography or X-ray imaging techniques. They are used also for killing cancer cells. Of course, we won't forget about the fact that radioactive substances can also in themselves cause cancer, okay, or lead to cancer. They can kill cells, they can destroy or kill, yeah, they can destroy the DNA, of a living organism. Yeah, so it means that they can serve a useful purpose and they can also cause problems when they are not properly handled. And that is why it is good that you, as a biological scientist, a medical scientist, a nurse, a toxicologist, a public health expert, or someone who is interested in occupational health and safety management should really be serious about learning or knowing and understanding the concept and principles of the essentials of chemistry of life so that you can help in managing of certain aspects of our economy. We truly need you. Ladies and gentlemen, electrons occupy energy levels called electron shells, as I indicated earlier. The electron shells or energy levels are located at some discrete distances from the nucleus. In other words, the shells are not inside the nucleus, but they are located at some discrete distances from the nucleus. The number of electrons in the outer shell of an atom is a determinant of the reactivity of that atom. It is this outer shell that I refer to as the valence shell. And as I just indicated, the number of electrons in the valence shell or the outer shell of an atom is a determinant of the reactivity of that atom. By rule, the first shell is said to be full when it is occupied by 2 electrons. Yes, the first electron shell is said to be full when it is occupied by 2 electrons. Note that there are some elements or atoms which may have only one shell around the nucleus. For example, the hydrogen has one, the helium also has one. And so by rule, the first shell, which is supposed to be the only shell for hydrogen and helium, okay, it will be said to be full only when it is occupied by 2 electrons. In actual fact, helium has 2 electrons which can occupy the one and the only shell. Hydrogen, on the other hand, has only one outer electron. So for it to become stable, it will need one more electron. In actual fact, for the first 20 atoms which occupy or which occur in the periodic table, okay, the first 20 atoms which occur in the periodic table, okay, they will range from the helium, like the hydrogen, through helium, through to calcium, okay, of atomic number 20. For these atoms, okay, every shell beyond the first is complete with 8 electrons. Okay, so the only exception is the hydrogen and then the helium. The hydrogen and helium, they have only one shell around the nucleus, and we've said that the first shell will become a complete when there are 2 electrons. But when we probably put aside these 2, then you realize that the rest, okay, from lithium to calcium, okay, every shell beyond the first will be complete with 8 electrons. This is in line with what we refer to as the octet rule. The octet rule states that atoms react with each other so as to have a completed outer shell with 8 electrons. Yes, the octet rule states that atoms react with each other so as to have a completed outer shell with 8 electrons, or to have a complete outer shell with 8 electrons. My dear people, most atoms naturally lack furred outer shells. That is the reality. The reality on the ground is that most atoms naturally lack furred outer shells. Accordingly, they react with each other to produce diverse compounds and or molecules, some of which are very important to the life of living organisms, including the human being. In other words, those atoms which lack furred outer shells include those which are very common to living organisms, and they are actually useful to them. And those living organisms, I have indicated that they include those of us who are human beings, and we are referred to as Homo sapiens. After those atoms which lack furred outer shell, okay, react with one another, they obtain what we call completed outer shell or complete outer shell. And therefore, we say they have obeyed the octet rule. After such atoms, which lack filled outer shell, react with one another, they obtain complete outer shell or complete outer shells. And when they do that, they obey the octet rule. The question is, how are ions formed? Ladies and gentlemen, ions, I-O-N-S, ions are formed when atoms gain or lose one or more electrons to achieve a completed outer shell or valence shell. Ions are formed when atoms gain or lose one or more electrons to achieve a completed outer shell or valence shell. There are two types of ions. One is a cation and the other is an anion. What is a cation? What is an anion? A cation is an ion with positive charge. So a cation has a positive charge. This means that that ion that we call cation possesses more protons or positively charged particles than electrons or negatively charged particles. Okay, a cation has more protons than electrons. Cations are formed when atoms lose one or more electrons. Cations are formed when atoms lose one or more electrons. It is the loss of the negatively charged electrons which give rise to an overall positive charge. Yes, I have indicated that a cation is an ion with positive charge. How come they become positively charged? They are ion with positive charge because they lose the negatively charged electron or electrons. And that situation is what gives rise to an overall positive charge. In other words, anions are atoms which possess more electrons than protons. That is, an anion is an atom with a negative charge. Based on these, you can afford to accept the fact that an ionic bond is an attraction between oppositely charged ions. An ionic bond can be defined as an attraction between oppositely charged ions. Oppositely charged ions. One is positively charged, the other is negatively charged. Cations and anions. Ladies and gentlemen, how are covalent bonds formed? Now you know how ionic bonds are formed. What about covalent bonds? Covalent compounds are formed when atoms share electrons. Yes, a covalent compound is formed when atoms share electrons, or sometimes, when they share electrons. A covalent bond is therefore formed through one or more shared pairs of electrons. A covalent bond is formed through one or more shared pairs of electrons. Did you know there are three types of covalent bonds? Namely, single, double, and triple covalent bonds. In the formation of covalent bonds, the sharing of electrons among the atoms involved may be equal or unequal. During the formation of covalent bonds, the sharing of electrons among the atoms involved may be equal or unequal. In the case of the polar covalent bonds, the sharing of electrons among atoms involved is not equal. In case a molecule is a polar one, the more electronegative atom bears a slightly negative charge, and the other atom bears a slightly positive charge. During the demonstration in our previous meeting, we indicated that water is a polar molecule. Indeed, it is the most common polar molecule we can find in our society as human beings. The polarity of its molecules makes it possible for hydrogen bonding to take place between water molecules. Yes, the polarity of water molecules makes it possible for hydrogen bonding to occur between water molecules. Ladies and gentlemen, hydrogen bonding is truly important in the world of chemistry of life, including the life of the human being. The question is, what is a hydrogen bond? A hydrogen bond is defined as a weak attraction which occurs between a slightly positive hydrogen atom and a slightly negative oxygen or nitrogen atom in the same or a different molecule. How will you define a hydrogen bond? A hydrogen bond is defined as a weak attraction which occurs between a slightly positive hydrogen atom and a slightly negative oxygen or nitrogen atom in the same or a different molecule. Hydrogen bonds aid the maintenance of the structure and function of cellular molecules. Yes, we've already said that living organisms are made up of elements. The elements, they form molecules. The molecules form parts of cells. Okay, so cells have molecules in them. Hydrogen bonds helps with the maintenance of the structure and function of those cellular molecules. Recall the fact that we have been able to establish the fact that the living organisms and their cells or their cell are made up of molecules. I am saying that living organisms may have cells or a cell. And the reason is that some living organisms are unicellular organisms. The whole organism is made up of only one cell, while some living organisms are made up of two or more cells. Whatever the case is, we can afford to say that both the living organism and its body cells are made up of molecules. Every living organism, whether it is unicellular or multicellular, okay, is composed of molecules. And right now, I have also added the fact that hydrogen bonds help with the maintenance of the structure and function of cellular molecules. So our bodies are made up of molecules, and hydrogen bonding play a key role in maintaining the structure and functions of those molecules. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, according to several authorities, the polarity of water and hydrogen bonding properties of water are responsible for its unique properties. The fact that water is polar and the fact that it has hydrogen bonds, okay, makes water have a unique properties. The question is, what are the unique properties of water? To begin with, I would like to say that the unique properties of water include the fact that water has a high heat capacity. Yes, water has what we call a high heat capacity. Why is it that water has a high heat capacity? Water has a high heat capacity because there exists in water many hydrogen bonds, okay, and those hydrogen bonds makes it possible for water to absorb a large amount of thermal heat without necessarily undergoing a significant, great, or a considerable change in its temperature. Yes, water has a high heat capacity, and this is because there exist many hydrogen bonds in water molecule, and that makes it possible for water to absorb a large amount of thermal heat without necessarily undergoing a significant grade or a considerable change in its temperature. What is the significance of that to us as living organisms or to us as human beings? Okay, and what is even the implication of water having such a property? That this situation, this characteristics of water makes the temperature of water to rise and fall slowly. Yes, the temperature of water rise and fall slowly because water has a high heat capacity. An advantage of this is that it makes it possible for human beings and other living things to be able to maintain internal temperatures and survive comparatively better. In other words, because of the fact that water has high heat capacity, okay, and we have a lot of water in our system, okay, our system can afford to take on or take up some high level of temperature without the high level of thermal energy or heat without necessarily we having a considerable change in temperature. Okay, that's why I have established the fact that an advantage of um, the temperature of water, okay, rising and falling slowly, is that it makes it possible for human beings and other living organisms to be able to maintain internal temperatures and survive comparatively better. In addition, water has a high heat of vaporization. Water has a high heat of vaporization. This is the second unique property of water. How come water has a high heat of vaporization? Water has a high heat of vaporization because the many hydrogen bonds in water must be broken in order to evaporate water. There are so many hydrogen bonds in water. And then for water to be evaporated or for water to undergo evaporation, the hydrogen bonds need to be broken down. What is an advantage of this one? Okay, what is an advantage of water having a high heat of vaporization? Or what's an advantage? What's the advantage of the fact that to cause water to evaporate, it has to undergo a long process of getting its hydrogen bonds being broken. An advantage of such a thing is that bodies of living organisms, including that of the human being, cool when their heat is used to evaporate water. An advantage of this unique property of water, namely, water has a high heat of vaporization, is that bodies of living organisms, including the human being, cool when their heat is used to evaporate water. Furthermore, water is a good solvent, and this unique property is attributable to its polarity. Yes, so we are talking about another unique property of water. Water is a good solvent, and this unique property we attribute it to its polarity. We said water is a polar molecule. An advantage of this is that polar substances dissolve readily in water. And a considerable number of the molecules which the body needs are hydrophilic molecules and therefore dissolve in water, and thereby making them usable by the body. Of course, there are molecules which are hydrophobic and therefore do not dissolve in water. Whatever the case is, a considerable number of the molecules which the human body and the body of other organisms need, okay, are hydrophilic molecules, and therefore they dissolve in water, and by dissolving in water, they become usable by the body. Another property of interest is that water molecules are cohesive and adhesive. Water molecules are cohesive and adhesive. Note that the word cohesion under consideration, refers to the ability of water molecules to cling to each other due to hydrogen bonding. So cohesion is the ability of water molecules to cling to each other due to hydrogen bonding. This property makes it possible for water molecules to flow freely. This property of water makes it possible for water molecules to flow freely. It also gives rise to the surface tension property of water. This unique property of water allows for capillary action in plant species and is vital to life on the surface of aquatic ecological systems. Did you know? Adhesion refers to the ability of water molecules to cling to other polar surfaces. This property of water is also due to water's polarity and becomes important when we think of capillary action. You can do some more research on what is meant by capillary action. Yes, you can really perform an independent research to explore the capillary action that we are talking about. But in the meantime, take note of the fact that cohesion and adhesion account for water transport in plants as well as transport in blood vessels, including the human being. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you need to take note of the fact that cohesion and adhesion, okay, account for water transport in plants as well as transport in blood vessels, including the blood vessels of human beings. Did you know? There's another property of water? Have you noticed that ice is less dense than liquid water? From the field of chemistry and physics, we know that at temperatures below 4 degrees Celsius, hydrogen bonds between water molecules become more rigid, but also more open. And that makes water to expand as it reaches 0 degrees Celsius and freezes. Yes, water expands as it reaches 0 degrees Celsius and freezes. It is possible that you have noticed that ice floats on liquid water. But if you haven't seen that before, take note of the fact that ice floats on liquid water. In the aquatic world in particular, floating ice acts as an insulator on top of frozen body of water and thereby helping protecting life in water. Indeed, the unique properties of water makes it possible for living organisms, including the human beings, to exist and perform cellular activities. Yes, the unique properties of water make it possible for living organisms, including the human beings, to exist and perform cellular activities. Did you know a small fraction of water molecules does dissociate to form an equal number of hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions? Yes, a small fraction of water molecules dissociate to form an equal number of hydrogen ions, which is H plus ion, and hydroxide ion, OH minus ion. At this point, one may ask, what are acids and bases? Ladies and gentlemen, acids are those substances which have the ability to dissociate partially or completely in water to release hydrogen ions. Acids dissociate partially or completely in water to release hydrogen ions. Those which dissociate partially are said to be weak acids. An example of a weak acid is carbonic acid. This acid is a very important acid because of the role it plays in the regulation of pH of the human blood. Naturally, we have this acid called carbonic acid and its ion, bicarbonate ion, in our body. And our body use these two to regulate our pH naturally. Ladies and gentlemen, the type of acids which dissociate completely or almost completely in water are said to be strong acids. Okay, so if there's an acid and it's able to dissociate completely or almost completely in water, then we can afford to say that it is a strong acid. Examples of strong acids are sulfuric acids, okay, and hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid is one particular acid which is also found in the body of the human being and plays a very key role. We find it in the stomach of the human being and plays a role in digestion of food when it comes to breaking down, okay, of the food that we consume, okay. And being acidic, it is also able to kill pathogens that we may take ingest along with our food. So the weak acid, the carbonic acid, is very important in regulating our body pH. And then again, the strong acid like the hydrochloric acid in our body is also very important because of its role in digestion. Ladies and gentlemen, let us also take note of the fact that bases, okay, bases are substances which either take up hydrogen ion or release hydroxide ion. In other words, bases are basically the opposite of acids to basically. Why? Because we indicated that acids, okay, release hydrogen ion, but bases take hydrogen ion, okay, and then they release hydroxide ion. An example of a strong base is sodium hydroxide. So in short, what can we say of acids and bases? We can afford to say that acids donate protons and bases accept protons. And this you know from chemistry in your previous studies, maybe SHS or advanced level. But those of you who haven't come across such a thing, take note of the fact that acids donate protons and bases accept protons. We should also take note of the fact that there are acidic solutions. Once we have acids, there are acidic solutions. And once we have bases, there are basic solutions. Of course, solutions with equal number of hydrogen ion and hydroxide ion are said to be neutral. In other words, we also have solutions which are neutral. So we can talk about solution which is acidic, a solution which is neutral, and a solution which is basic. In the case of acidic solutions, there are more hydrogen ions than hydroxide ions. Okay, in the case of acidic solutions, there are more hydrogen ions than hydroxide ions. Example of acidic solutions you can find in your home or on the market are tomatoes, coffee, vinegar, and lemon juice. Examples of basic solutions which are common are ammonia and milk of magnesia. Ammonia and milk of magnesia. Ladies and gentlemen, the pH scale is used to indicate the acidity, basicity, or neutrality of a solution. Yes, there's something that we call pH scale, and it is used to indicate the acidity, basicity, or alkalinity, okay, and neutrality of a solution. Note that the values of pH range from 0 to 14. Acidic solutions have a pH less than 7. For basic solutions, there are more hydroxyl ions than hydrogen ions. Such solutions have a pH greater than 7. Yes, the basic solutions have a pH greater than 7. Note that there are molecules which are referred to as buffer, B-U-F-E. Remember, I spoke about the carbonic acid and its ion, bicarbonate ion. They are examples of what we call buffer molecules. What are they? By definition, a buffer is a chemical or a combination of chemicals which keeps pH of a solution within normal limits. Yes, a buffer is a chemical or a combination of chemicals which keeps pH of a solution within normal limits. Ladies and gentlemen, half of all living organisms, including human beings, necessitate maintenance of the pH of body fluids within certain narrow range or limits, or else health and therefore well-being suffers considerably. Yes, the health of all living things, including the human being, including you and I, requires that there should be maintenance of the pH of body fluids within certain narrow range or limits, or else health and therefore well-being will definitely suffer considerably. Did you know your blood as a human being is normally of pH 7.4? That's the normal pH for the human blood, and is therefore slightly alkaline or basic in nature. In case your blood pH drops below 7.0, a biomedical condition called acidosis will be a consequence, or the consequence of it. You can suffer what we call acidosis when your blood pH drops below 7.0. On the other hand, in case your blood pH rises above 7.0, an equally life-threatening biomedical condition, which is known as alkalosis, will be the consequence. In other words, you can either suffer acidosis or alkalosis when your body's pH is not properly managed. Fortunately, your body has built-in mechanisms to help it prevent considerable changes in its pH. Yes, the human body has built-in mechanisms to help prevent considerable changes in its pH. It has also been observed by ecologists that apart from pH changes in our blood, which could become health issue, there have been detrimental consequences to both non-living things and living organisms, as both snow and rainwater have become more acidic over the years. Yes, we call something acid deposition, acid rain. This has become one of the major ecological problems. Ecologically speaking, most of the problems in human affairs, are to a significant extent ecological in nature. And one of such ecological issues is acid deposition. Probably you would want to read more about this one as part of your independent research. And I give you a thumb up for that. Show that you can independently pursue knowledge. Show that you can study on your own and secure knowledge and move on to gain understanding and be able to apply the knowledge and the understanding that you acquire. And then when you get to know also how to apply the knowledge, you should go on to apply. These are the people we need for the continent of Africa in particular and the world at large. Ladies and gentlemen, through your basic, secondary or advanced level education, you have realized that matter is defined as anything which has mass and occupies space. But in case you are not aware of such a thing, take note right now of the fact that Matter is defined as anything which has mass and occupies space. You should also take note of the fact that the best known matter, okay, or matter is known, okay, matter is known to exist in three states mostly, okay, and those states are gas, liquid, and solid. Of course, modern science, okay, has introduced several other states of matter. This one too, I think this evening or today, you should try and do some independent research and explore what constitutes the state of matter from modern or more recent perspective. But the best known, okay, state of matter are gas, liquid, and solid. You should also recall the fact that all matter is made up of chemical elements. I have indicated this one earlier, that all matter is made up of chemical elements. Note also that a chemical element is a substance which cannot be broken down into substances with different properties. I hope you have remembered such a thing because we've also talked about it. We've said that a chemical element is a substance which cannot be broken down into substances with different properties. Did you know a chemical element is composed of one type of atom? A chemical element is composed of one type of atom. I also indicated earlier that an element and its atom share the same name and the same chemical symbol. Studies have shown that only 6 chemical elements make up at least 95 to about 96% of the body weight of all living organisms. In actual fact, the percentage varies. You know, I've seen 98, I've seen 99, and things like that. But I think for today, we can take note of the fact that, okay, only 6 chemical elements make up at least 95 to 96% of the body weight of all living things. And they are designated with the acronym CHNOPS. 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 Indeed, these elements have been adjudged to be the most significant or crucial among the elements found in living organisms. Yes, the CHNOPS: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, okay, the most significant or crucial among the elements found in living organisms. Of the 6 elements that constitute the CHNOPS, 4 make up the largest proportion or percentage of the human body weight in particular. Yes, your body weight, okay, is made up of approximately or consists of approximately 96%. Oh no, let me put it this way. Okay, 4 elements. Okay, 4 elements is known to make up the largest proportion or percentage of your body as a human being. These 4 elements constitute approximately 96% of your body weight. And those 4 elements are carbon, which constitutes 18.5%, hydrogen 9.5%, oxygen 65%, and nitrogen 3.3%. You can use the acronym CHON or ONCH, okay, to designate these 4 elements. They are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Or when you are using the ONCH, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and hydrogen. The 4 elements under consideration are part of water. So look at the chemical formula for water, H2O. In other words, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. So you can find the hydrogen here, and you can find oxygen in water. Again, you can find these 4 elements in lipids, in RNA, in DNA, carbohydrates, and proteins. Did you know several authorities have indicated that more than half of the body of the human being is made up of water? Yes, the range which has been provided so far, or has been reported so far, is from 50 to about 70%. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, very soon we are bringing our lecture to an end. Did you know there is a dozen or so other chemical elements which are mostly metals, which constitute the remaining 4% of the body weight of the human being? Yes, we've indicated that certain elements, 4 elements, constitute up to 96%. So what constitutes the rest? Okay, there are there's a dozen or so other chemical elements, and most of them are metals, which constitute the remaining 4% of the body weight of the human being. That is your body weight. These elements are said to occur in tiny or minute quantities or amounts, even though they are very useful in the process which are involved in the transporting of oxygen, releasing hormones, regulating the body blood pressure level, maintaining bone strength, and so on and so forth. Yes, there are certain elements which constitute just 4% of the body weight of a human being. Okay, your body weight. There are certain 4 elements which constitute just 4% of your body weight, and they actually occur in minute or small quantities, albeit they are very useful in the process which are involved in transporting oxygen, releasing hormones, regulating the level of your blood pressure, maintaining your bone or the strength of your bones, and so on and so forth. Such chemical elements include calcium, potassium, lithium, copper, and iron. Yes, such chemical elements include calcium, potassium, copper, iron, and lithium. The calcium is the most abundant mineral of the body of humans. Yes, it has been reported that the calcium is the most abundant mineral in the body of humans. So, um, um, this calcium, okay, which is considered the most abundant mineral in your body, is vital for what purpose? For hormone secretion. It is good for muscle contraction. It is useful for blood clotting. It plays a role in heartbeat regulation, plus teeth and bone maintenance. Yes, calcium plays all these roles. What about the potassium? The potassium helps in managing heart rhythm. Yes, the potassium helps in managing your heart rhythm. In addition, it balances water and mineral content in the body. It controls blood pressure and helps in building muscles. What about the copper? The copper is needed by some proteins to perform their functions. In other words, without the copper, some proteins may not be able to perform their function. The protein which makes the energy carrying ATP molecules, for example, needs copper to function. Again, or furthermore, copper is required to produce collagen. Copper is required to produce collagen. Copper is needed by your body to be able to produce collagen. Did you know collagen is the most abundant protein in human beings and the key parts of connective tissue? Collagen is the most abundant protein in human beings and the key part of connective tissue. What about the iron that we make mention of? And then the lithium. Let's begin with the iron by saying that the iron is important to the processes which are involved in energy production. Again, oxygen transport and immune system. The ion is important to the processes which are involved in energy production, oxygen transport, and immune function. Did you know hemoglobin is the protein which gives blood its red color? That same hemoglobin requires iron in order for it to carry oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the human body. Hemoglobin requires iron in order for it to carry oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the human body. The pregnant women, may be aware of some of these things. You take folic acid, and those of you who read the label, those of you who read the label of the medications that you take, you realize that the folic acid has some considerable amount of iron in it, and the objective is to help you revitalize, in the sense that your hemoglobin actually requires iron in order for it to carry oxygen from your lungs to the rest of your body. But not you alone. Both male and females have hemoglobin, and the hemoglobin helps in the transport of oxygen. Remember, hemoglobin as a protein, is able to combine with oxygen to form what we call oxyhemoglobin, and that is how your body is able to get oxygen to all the parts of your body where it is needed. That hemoglobin won't be able to perform its function without iron. It needs iron to be able to perform that function. Additionally, the lithium that we spoke about is believed to affect, to a considerable extent, the release of the chemical messenger called serotonin. Yes, lithium is believed to affect a considerable, I beg your pardon, lithium is believed to affect to a considerable extent the release of the chemical messenger called serotonin. Yes, so you have another assignment. What is serotonin? What is serotonin? So you would want to conduct some research and know the what is meant by serotonin and why is it important. That if lithium's influence can't be affected, probably you should be able to survive or something like that. No, you find out what is meant by serotonin, but in the meantime, take note of the fact that lithium is believed to affect to a considerable extent the release of the chemical messenger called serotonin. Again, some authorities have indicated that lithium is used to treat mood disorders. Yes, lithium is used to treat mood disorders. This is where we'll draw the curtain today. Thank you very much, and see you in another lecture. Bye-bye.